Hey, welcome to Rocket Motivation. Before we start the show, I want to thank our great sponsors, Alliance Mechanical Solutions, specializing in pipe and structural crafts, and AMS Utilities, specializing in utilities construction. Both companies experienced in getting back up since 2010.
I remember as I closed my eyes, knowing I was in trouble. As I closed my eyes, I could hear people screaming. Well, I literally woke up 2 months later, and I was hooked up to an Ecmo machine. There's no telling how many different types of machines I was hooked up to, and then told that I needed a double lung transplant because I'd been in a coma for 2 months. And when something like that happens, it's just so important to recognize that moment and then to capture it and take control of it. Life that we make is just a choice of how we react to things. And in that particular moment, I was just like, well, this is what it is. What's next? How do we fix it? And so I did learn a lot about myself and about this journey and what it's brought me. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's made me a better person.
Hey everyone, this is Rod Cate and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. This week's guest got COVID, like so many other people. However, the difference is that as a result of COVID, this week's guest spent 2 months in a coma and then required a double lung transplant to live. He's going to tell his story of overcoming COVID and what it's like lying in a hospital bed being kept alive by machines as he was waiting on a lung donor. Just an incredible story.
3, 2, 1.
Austin Luke, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Great day to be alive.
All right, Austin, let's start out by doing this. Tell us kind of where you are now in your life, kind of what do you do, your work, where do you live, how old you are, just kind of get us up to speed.
Well, thank the Lord, I am currently back to work. I am back to fishing. I'm back to hunting and living as normal a life as I can. Coming from where I've come from, that is quite the miracle. Just on a daily basis, it just feels so wonderful to be back to work.
Yeah. And where do you live?
I live over in Daphne, Alabama, not too far away from a little area called Belforest.
Okay. All right. Well, Austin, what do you do for a living now?
I sell loading dock equipment. So the company that I work for is called Arbonne Equipment Corporation. It's a manufacturer's representative of the company Rod Cate.
Okay.
And we make and manufacture leading equipment in the industry for loading docks.
Cool. All right. So let's go back. All right, you get COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, when was it, and tell the listeners what happened.
Man, it was, we were just closing out a great year. Territory was doing fantastic, but it was December the 12th that I got a phone call from a coworker basically telling me, hey, I got COVID, you need to go get checked out. So I went over to American Family Care, and they checked me out, said, hey, you got it, here's some meds, go home, good luck. So at that point, I went back and, just kind of treated it like, hey, no big deal. Everybody's got this. I'll shake this no time at all. Well, over the next couple of days, I ended up having, fever probably around 104, was taking ice baths at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to keep the fever down. And eventually, my family doctor said, you need to go to the hospital now because my oxygen was sitting right around maybe about a 70. So when I went to Thomas Hospital, and that was December the 15th when I called the ambulance to get in. And 2 days later, on December the 17th, I was put on a ventilator.
All right, so you're put on the ventilator. All right, 5 days before, you're just a normal, healthy guy.
Yep.
Now you're in Thomas Hospital and you're on a ventilator.
Yep.
Now what's going on?
Well, it was different because when I got there, they had put me on a gurney out in the middle of the hall. There were so many people in there during that time that it took a while to get me into a room. While I was there, I could hear people screaming and hollering, and it was all COVID related. So while I was sitting on the bed, the doctor came over. He said, hey, this isn't anything we're not seeing in here right now. We're just going to give you a cocktail of medicines. We're going to have you out of here in a couple of weeks. And then we sat there and started talking some fishing. I remember as I closed my eyes, knowing I was in trouble because as I closed my eyes, I could hear people screaming. Well, I literally woke up 2 months later, and I was hooked up to an Ecmo machine. I was hooked up to a ventilator. I was hooked up to there's no telling how many different types of machines I was hooked up to, and then told that I needed a double lung transplant because I'd been in a coma for 2 months.
All right. And so the listeners know, what is an ECMO machine?
It's a big, long medical name. Basically, what an Ecmo machine does, that is the ticket to getting over a severe case of COVID. What it does is it oxygenates your blood to the point, because, as your lungs are working, it's causing that blood to become enriched in order to be able to function the rest of your body. So the Ecmo machine basically subsidizes that.
Yeah, we see in the movies all the time or on TV shows that someone's been in a coma for months and then they wake up. And you went through that.
Yeah.
What is it like? I mean, when you woke up, was it just like you just been asleep all night? Or how was it when you first wake up from being in a coma for 2 months?
Well, the coma was quite an interesting time just because, I almost died 3 times when I was in that coma. There were many times that while I was at Thomas Hospital, my parents were immediately notified. They came in and assisted, and there were several times where my oxygen dropped to the point that the nurses FaceTimed my parents and said, "You need to say your goodbyes." That happened, I'd say 2 or 3 times when they called them up. It got to the point that my parents, they couldn't stand to hear the phone ring. So my family went through all that anxiety. So as you come out of a coma, it's like coming out of a deep sleep, with the exception of you can hear everything that's going on inside your body. When you're on a ECMO machine, you can feel and hear your heart beating all the time. It's as loud as I'm talking right now, just because you've got all those attachments going into your heart. And at the same time, you can also hear all kinds of noises, constant beeping, things like that. But yeah, as you come out of it, it's like coming out of a deep sleep. You're very groggy, and then you eventually come to, and then just because the amount of drugs they had me on was just incredible. So
you're on a ventilator and on the ECMO machine being kept alive for this time. And was there ever any talk of like, well, maybe it's time just to pull the plug?
Yes, I was at Pensacola Baptist when they had several conversations with my father involving, possibly waking up in a vegetative state, to the point that they, might have considered pulling the plug, but that was never an option for my family. My family came in and specifically told the doctors, we're fighting for him till the end, and we're going to give him every chance we can.
I mean, you wake up after 2 months, but there was no guarantee that you were going to wake up 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I mean, no. but you pulled out of it.
Yeah, I pulled out of it. Luckily, my parents know me, know my mentality as far as my mental strength, and my mom knows me better than anybody. She basically said, if we give him a shot at this, he's gonna make it.
Tell us about when you first learned you're going to need a both lung transplant to survive.
The first words out of my mouth when I woke up and somebody told me that I needed a double lung transplant was, I just took a nap. I just fell asleep. I don't know how this happened. So, yeah, it was shocking just to go to sleep, turn around, then wake up and be told, okay, here's what's left. We need to replace some parts in you.
You came in the hospital with COVID. You've been out for 2 months. Machines have been keeping you alive. Now they're telling you you're going to have transplant on both your lungs just to survive. What's going through your head?
They broke the news to me. And I sat there and I was kind of processing, and literally I said this, I go, well, crap. Yeah, and then after that, I was just real quiet and processing everything. So, yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it.
I mean, I guess, what's the point in getting all upset or throwing a fit? Like you said, oh, crap. I mean, it's time to deal with it.
Well, yeah, that's just it, is that, it's not like anything that has been done can be undone. And when something like that happens, it's just so important to recognize that moment and then to capture it and take control of it. Life that we make is just a choice of how we react to things. And in that particular moment, I was just like, well, this is what it is. What's next? How do we fix it?
And so you get transferred to Shands Hospital down at the University of Florida in Gainesville.
Oh, amazing place.
You're awaiting a lung transplant. And so how are they keeping you alive?
I'm being kept alive through the ventilator. I'm being kept alive through the Ecmo machine. The biggest thing is that when I woke up in that state, I'd been laying on my back for 2 months. My muscles were gone. I could not move anything but my arms and my fingers. So the doctors immediately said, we need you to start conditioning yourself to get ready for this transplant. So that involved just the basics of getting up, walking, just moving anything to regain that motion, and doing lots and lots of PT.
But what's it like to be mentally alert, but you've got a machine that's breathing for you?
Oh man, it's very tough. It's very hard to describe when you're sitting there and you can think clearly and you cannot talk. It's like being a turtle flipped up on its back, where that's the job of everybody, of your support team and your caretakers. It's their job to help get you flipped back over. So you're helpless, but at the same time, you can't hardly communicate with anything other than your eyes, maybe some breathing, and then, if your hands will function, you can write on a board.
How long did you have to wait until you got your lung transplant?
I waited 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Which is incredible. There's still people there waiting on stuff.
Yeah, I mean, incredible that you got it so quickly.
Yeah, it was a blessing from God that things were as ready and available as they were.
And tell us what's this like, because waiting for a lung transplant, that means you're waiting for somebody to die.
Exactly.
So you can get their lungs. I mean, what's that like mentally? You got to have these, but then it's somewhat morbid in that you're like, I need somebody to die so I can get my lungs. Well,
yeah.
Take us through that mental process.
It's horrible. The fact that somebody's about to lose their loved one, their child, their son, their daughter, so that I can live. I mean, there's a weight there that I have to live with on a daily basis now that I cannot begin to describe what that's like.
Do you ever meet your donor family?
No. There's a process you have to go through in order to be able to do all that and to write the thank you letter. Then there's, Shands has a coordinator program that they mediate a lot of that through. So really all you can do is just write the letter and, hope you hear from them. So maybe we'll get to that point one day. I would love to. Be wonderful closure.
But just because there's lungs available, first, they got to be compatible, right?
Yeah, it's down to a molecular level.
And tell us about that. Tell the listeners what the lungs have got to be like, what they've got to consist of to work with you.
Oh well, that's my doctors be able to describe that better to you. All that I know is that, like in our business, you measure the width, you measure the height, you measure the thickness, and thank God I didn't do it because we probably had to reorder them about 3 times. But no, seriously, it goes down to blood type. It goes down to the size of the cavity in there. Not too much I know other than that.
And you don't know. They're prepping you. They're getting you ready to go to the surgery to get the lung transplants. But I guess you don't know if it's going to work.
Exactly. No, yeah, there is when the lungs are introduced into the body, then comes a year in which the lungs have to adapt. And then, basically because they got to get nice and homey in there.
Right.
And so that period of time we're watching out for what's called rejection. You introduce lungs into a person's body. Just say, for example, if you tried to put my lungs into your body and then reintroduce them into my body or yours into mine, your white blood cells would immediately attack that foreign substance because it's not yours. So what ends up happening is that's called rejection. Your body is trying to reject that organ.
Now, how long has it been since you've had your transplant?
Over a year.
Okay, so as far as the doctors go, I mean, are you pretty much out of the woods?
That's what they said, yes. When we saw them this past week, they were ecstatic.
All right, well, good. So tell me what it was like when the lungs are there. They're saying, hey, we're going to go, here we go, it's go time. What's going through your mind at this point?
That was a wonderful night. March 11th and 12th, that's what we kind of consider my new birthday, my second chance at life. We basically been told that some lungs were available. One of the doctors, Dr. Shivani, got in a helicopter. She flew over to where these lungs were. They said they're fit. It's like, okay, it's go time. So they brought them back, and then there was a giant preparation of, where you have to, basically clean down, wash down, you are prepped for this operation. You talk about anxiety of wondering, am I going to make it through the surgery? Is this going to be right? What if something goes wrong? They prepped us, when I say us, then my family was involved. I say us to include them. But when they prepped us, one of the doctors came in and started telling us about all the worst case scenario of things that could happen during the surgery. And one of them was ejection of organs. And so I'm sitting there on a trach, sitting there looking at this doctor, and he's telling me, body parts may go flying through the room. And I'm like, this is not good. So we finally get to a point where we're ready to go down to surgery, and all the nurses come in, and it's like a party. They're so excited. Everybody's hooting and hollering and having a good time. And they started playing some music on the way down. What they were playing it's one of my favorite songs. It's I Got Friends in Low Places. And it's very true because of all the people that I call on a daily basis. Most of them are blue-collar folks, good salt-of-the-earth people. In that moment, I was thinking about them, a lot of my customers who I've become friends with. I was thinking about them on the way down, wondering if I'd ever get to see them again. And, as we went down and everybody was busting out singing, we got off the elevator and went into surgery. And right then, my heartbeat was really, really high. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of lowered down, almost like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do this.
Right. Okay, you get the lungs. I know that there's a weaning off process, but you take a breath for the first time on your own in a long time. What's that like?
It's hard to put into words. There is a weaning process there where they basically back you off of oxygen, and then they move you over to what's called room oxygen, which is, the same stuff me and you are sitting here breathing now. So as they back you off of that, you are using the machine less and less and less. And it's kind of scary because, you have literally spent 2 months breathing and associating this machine and its sound, putting you to sleep every night with life. So you become dependent on it like that, like to the point that it's almost like you're scared to come off of it. It's almost like, walking or riding a bike is the first time you're kind of wobbly, before you eventually take off. So as I was able to eventually be weaned off of this oxygen, one day they just came in and they said, "Hey, Bob, you've been breathing on your own for 10 minutes. I was mad because I was like, "You really just backed all that oxygen off without telling me?" He's like, "Yeah, that's why we do it." It's like, if we'd have told you, your heart rate would have gone through the roof.
Right.
Because you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm breathing on my own."
Yeah.
But that first breath of that knowledge to know that everything is okay is indescribable.
I know there's got to be a huge recovery process when you get these
Massive.
new lungs. So what was that all about?
Massive. The recovery process involved, lots of PT, lots of exercise. As far as, whether you're standing, walking, I had to learn how to do everything all over again. Walking, breathing, chewing, brushing my teeth, putting on my clothes, just being able to walk. Just being able to walk 5 feet might as well just have been a marathon. Like, I'd walk 5 feet and then I'd just be exhausted to the point that I couldn't breathe and that I have to sit down. Every single day, it was just a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. And then all of a sudden, I was walking on halls.
And we're going to jump ahead a little bit, but you've run a 5K since.
Yes, sir, I have.
Tell us about that.
Oh, it was incredible, man. It was the Battle of Mobile Bay. Yeah, just so you know, in case anybody out there's ever run that race, they start that thing with a cannon. Yeah. That wasn't in the brochure. So after I started off the race with a mild heart attack, I was able to finish, but it wasn't anything impressive, but just a simple fact that I was healthy enough to go out there and do it really meant the world to me, and it really wasn't just for me, it was for everybody that got me there.
You say it wasn't that big of a deal, but yeah, it is a big deal.
Yeah.
Think about it, coming from being kept alive by machines to running a 5K, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things I wanted to do, just did it on a whim and said I needed to do this to just prove to myself that, hey, we got this.
You ever have the why me moment while you were going through all this?
Oh, yeah, that'll come on every now and then, almost, every day. When, something like that, something happens, or, I get winded doing an exercise, or, where it does come into the why me. But I think when that happens, I think that the Lord blessed me with this because he knew I could handle it. That he knew that I had something in me that says that, we're going to see what you're made of. And, sometimes life will throw you curveballs, but I'll quote Doc Holliday by saying, "I'll be your huckleberry, and that's just my game." Just goes with my personality.
Well, what have you learned about yourself through all this?
I am loved. I've got an amazing support group. Sorry if I'm getting choked up thinking about it. I probably got 150,000 faces going through my head right now. My parents are incredible people. They have fought and been through some incredible emotional trauma, and they're the only reasons that I'm here. Between them and my family and my company, even my boss. My boss. I mean, how many people are blessed enough to say that their boss, when they were in the hospital, went every week and cut his parents' yard? That's the kind of level of people that I get to hang with every day.
Right. And you're still working with that same company, right?
Dang right. They held my job.
Yeah.
They said, come on home. We'll be ready for you, buddy.
Well, that's something in and of itself, too, to have.
It's amazing.
A company like that held your job for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was so cool. Like coming back and coming to work and coming to see the customers, and the fact that nothing had changed. They said, here it is. It's ready for you. Welcome back.
Do you view this now as that you've got a second chance at life, or do you view it as, like, man, I had some bad luck? Are you viewing it as the cup half full or the cup half empty?
So I've always been a cup half empty kind of guy until this thing happened, and then I realized that life is so precious. Life in itself is just so finite that it can be taken from you in just an instant. The one thing that I learned when I was in that bed is that I didn't want any material things. I didn't want money. I didn't want anything other than to be well and walking. The most basic things in the world. Just being able to breathe by yourself is just a blessing from God. And so I did learn a lot about myself and about, this journey and what it's brought me. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's made me a better person.
So sitting here today, looking into the future, what do you want to get out of life?
I think I've already found it, and that is contentment. I am content and I am happy that because I have seen the bottom of the barrel that life has to offer. I mean, I can be happy sitting in a parking lot with a goldfish in a bowl, I mean, just as far as my level of contentment. But what I want to do with my life is I want this to be an example where I can be a shining light for God, and that through my pain and my suffering on this earth, that people can see that God has given me a second chance at life.
So let me ask you this. When people have tough times, I mean, it doesn't have to be as bad as what you've been through. It doesn't have to be as bad as what I've been through. Because when they're going through it, it seems bad. And it is. But so based on what you've been, what advice would you give somebody to help them get through a tough time?
I'd give them a couple of different pointers. I would say, and I would go 3, 2, 1. Third thing I would say is examine your support system. I mean, I never realized how blessed a person I am until I went through this moment. One of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life, a wonderful Christmas movie. And George Bailey gets to see what his life would be like if he was never born and see the impact it is. I have had that experience. I have been able to see the type of people and the people that rally around you to know that, I mean, if I died, on the way home from this thing, I'd be a happy man. So I would encourage people to examine their support system, to see who rallies around them during a time of need. And the second thing I would probably say is just don't give up on anything. It sounds cliche, but the reason it sounds cliche is because it's true. As people never give up, or, like Iaconelli out there screaming about a fish, I mean, the reason it is because there is truth in it. No matter what life throws at you, don't ever give up on it. Don't ever give up on anything. Just see it as an opportunity, like I've done with this, to embrace these problems as they happen to you. Make them your own and think, this is why God put me on this earth, so that I can show people what I'm made of. And the number one thing I tell people they need to do is examine your relationship with Jesus Christ. Examine your relationship with Him, just because there is peace in that there is no understanding, that just goes beyond all understanding. That would be my number one thing that I would tell you, because after an experience like that, the only thing that I'm worried about is how I live the rest of my life, because eventually I'm going to get to see the man.
So this experience has changed you. I mean, I'm almost asking that rhetorically. I know the answer. So based on what you've been through, how do you want to live the rest of your life? What example do you want to set?
As far as the example that I want to set, I want to be able somebody to be able to look at me and say, that's how you do it. He's going to take advantage of every opportunity that he gets. He's going to go fishing with every dude in Mobile. He's going to go out and live life to the fullest. He's going to have a family. He's going to have kids. He's just, I mean, the list is endless as far as what I can do now with my life. So I will take advantage of as much God allows me to in as much time as he allows me to.
All right, and so now, and this next question, it may not even be fair because you've said so much and you've given such great advice and you've really dug deep. But I always give my guests the parting shot, and so this is the time to where if you haven't said anything yet that's still on your mind or in your heart, that it's something the listeners need to hear. Kind of give us something to take us home.
Man, I've really put a lot of thought into that as far as, the right thing to say. I guess I'm going to close with this. It's Joshua 1:9. So have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And from a second point, I would like to point out the power of prayer. One of the things that I truly believed helped get me through this entire experience was the fact that, we use a website called posthope.org, and you can go to that website, posthope.org, and it's got journals written by my dad called Austin's Battle. And in those journal entries, you can read and you can hear his voice, and just as a father talking about his son. But we kept track of the website. There were close to 150,000 people worldwide praying for us, and it happened at all times. It happened while we were in surgery. It happened just at any time we were in the hospital. Somebody was always praying and giving us that power of protection. So the second point that I would tell people is that pray about your problems. And I tell people never to give up, but also pray about your problems and offer them up to the Lord, because he will hear you. I'm a living example of that God indeed does answer prayer.
Hey, all right, so I want to talk a little bit about this website. So is this a website that your father started?
Yes, sir. This was a website because of the fact that, we had so many people calling us. If people ever get into a predicament like the one that myself got into, in order to be able to keep people updated, you can use groups like, do groups on Facebook. But the one that my dad used was a website called posthope.org. And, it basically lets you keep journal entries, add photos, videos, things like that. But it's an independent charitable organization.
But now, if somebody wanted to follow your story or what you went through, is there a way they can do it?
Yeah, just add me on Facebook. Facebook's the best way to do it. If you ever want to talk, reach out to me on Messenger. That's also a great way to, for us to talk and, help any way I can. Or if you want to get pointed in the right direction on a transplant, I know the best in the business.
All right. So if anybody wants to follow Austin, it's Austin Luke on Facebook?
That's it. Okay. And look for the guy with the big fish.
All right. Austin Luke, it's been a pleasure having you on Rocket Motivation. I'm glad you reached out to me because I wouldn't have known
Thank you for this
story.
opportunity.
I wouldn't have known your story if you didn't, and it's been my pleasure, my honor to have you on my show.
Thank you for having me, sir.
What a great story with Austin Luke. COVID, coma, lung transplant, second chance at life. What an inspiration. Next week's guest is Rashiki Leatherwood. He's going to tell his story about his life's hardships and overcoming obstacles and how he lifts up everyone he connects with. Going to be a great show. See you next week. So thanks again for listening to Rocket Motivation. I want to again thank our sponsors, Alliance Mechanical Solutions and AMS Utilities, both companies helping build the Gulf Coast since 2010. If you want to learn more about these companies, visit their website, www.alliancemechanicalsolutions.com. If you would like to get my book, Get Back Up, it's available at Amazon. Just put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Cate, and the book will pop up. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to Rocket Motivation wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please rate and review the shows and spread the word about Rocket Motivation to your friends. So until next time, remember, never give up and always get back up.